in the squadron. They called him Bullets, but we call him Greg Kelly. Greg Kelly is on the air on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
You know, I was driving on the FDR Drive going south this morning, and, right south of 96th Street, you go into that tunnel, and up to the right is Gracie Mansion. And I always think about, who's in there and what's happening and the history and when I've been there and who's lived there and Giuliani and LaGuardia and Koch and the rest. And now we have Mamdani and his crazy wife, or Crazy Mamdani and his crazy wife. You know what, I can't believe that they haven't apologized. They can't come forward and offered real words, conciliatory words to the Jewish community. She was liking and celebrating the October 7th massacre. That's who we have living in that house. I would evict them so fast. There's got to be a way. When did we sign off on that house? How do they get to be in that house? And this idiot, and he really is a depraved idiot in my opinion, going around provoking fights, right? There's something, he's up to something with, it seems to be Muslim every day, all day long, right? Now, was he that devout when he was in high school? Was he that devout before he was elected, before he started running, before he got into politics? Something tells me, and I'm actually hearing very consistently that this guy was far from a devout Muslim. Far, far, far from a devout Muslim. All right? Especially when it comes to, shall we say, LGBTQ plus IA practices. Okay? So I think it's a charade. And I think he's, he wants to provoke a fight. He wants people to call him out, basically, on his behavior and how he seems to be, I would say, a little bit over the top when it comes to religion. I mean, if we had a Christian mayor who was running around, in a monk outfit, right, beating his breast, let's say we had an Opus Dei Catholic, right? Would that be a little bit perturbing, right? Would that be disturbing? Would people wonder about that? Would the New York Times have something to say about that? You bet your sweet ass they would. Oh, boy, yes. How about somebody, an Orthodox Jew? Would that make certain people uncomfortable? Would the New York Times write about that? You bet your sweet ass. Sorry to say sweet ass, but I heard it once, and it's very effective sometimes. You bet your sweet ass you're sorry. There's something, it's provocative in a strange way. And this is kind of what he's counting on. He's like, well, putting it in our face, like kind of daring us to either make it an issue or not make it an issue. And if you make it an issue, right, the question of, oh, you must be Islamophobic, right? And then if you don't make it an issue, whatever he's up to, I think ultimately he wants communism and Sharia law. I don't know if those things are compatible, but he has said it pretty much out loud. He wants communism. He wants state ownership of private property. He doesn't think there should be billionaires. Well, shut up. I want to be a billionaire someday. I have my hopes. I have my dreams. I'm going to go for it. Who the hell are you to get involved? Anyway, it's kind of moot, somewhat. It's moot. So you're going to be seeing more personal antics. And why is it moot? Because, quite frankly, there's no money to do any of these crazy things he promised to do. Right? It was all a scam. We all are accustomed to politicians lying and that kind of thing. But I've never seen somebody lie so much and the New York Times fall in love with it, right? Lie, and somehow it's beautiful. And why is it beautiful? Because it comes from a guy like that. And by a guy like that, I mean young, non-white, Muslim, right? The wife, the hard left crap, getting arrested by the cops. That's all beautiful? No, it's actually pretty ugly and certainly unmayoral. You know what? It's also un-American. It's un-American. Here, the Post is pretty good on this about Mamdani's only New York City budget idea is wishing for all the cash he wants to spend. As alarm bells keep ringing about New York City's finances, Mayor Zoran Mamdani still insists the only answer is for someone to give him more money to spend. Two more bond rating outfits, Fitch and Kroll, joined Moody's last Friday in declaring the city's outlook negative. The next step is a drop in Gotham's bond rating, which will push up borrowing costs. That prompted City Controller Mark Levine to repeat his opposition to Mamdani's plan to grab $1.2 billion from the city's rainy day reserve. That cash is meant for an actual emergency, not to fund a new mayor's wish list. The bus is free and fast. At a city council hearing this month, Levine warned that city expenses are growing faster than revenues. He puts the budget gap at about $7 billion, $2 billion more than Mamdani claimed in his January report. It's very simple. We're spending more money than we're bringing in, Levine has said. Okay, yeah, I understand that. That's what's actually happening. Then again, Levine's a bit of a progressive himself. He's too progressive to do more than dance around the obvious need to cut spending. He joins the mayor in hoping to get more money from the state, then resorts to vague talk of identifying savings and sustaining spending growth when he means restraining it. Mamdani has not offered any fresh thoughts since dropping a helpful list of taxes that the legislature or city council could increase to gin up more cash for him to spend. He'd rather tax the rich, but is willing to tax everyone, whatever it takes. It's obvious he's decided to wait until he learns how much more Albany is going to rain down on him before he thinks about what else to do. But the state's set to blow well past its April 1st budget deadline, which means City Hall will be stuck scrambling fast when Mamdani finally realizes that no one's going to wave any magic wands for him. And in the meantime, our poor police department, right? Just careening from one catastrophe to the next. Tish, what's her name again? Jessica Tish, pretending that everything is fine as she just enjoys the status and the access that it's given her. She has absolutely no clue. She is just an amateur. A lot of amateurs out there. Nobody wants to do the work anymore. Nobody wants to. They just want to kind of chillax, get high. This weed stuff is having a grave impact on pretty much everything. Everything. And it doesn't matter if you're smoking weed or not. When 35% of the population is suddenly smoking weed over the past 5 years, that impacts everything. And we don't know where this goes. Hey, in the meantime, when you're wearing a seatbelt, wear a seatbelt and don't take your seatbelt off on the plane. I don't do that much myself. Sometimes when we get on the ground, I do, but you got to leave that bad boy on. Sean Duffy came all the way to New York to deliver this one message. This one message was pretty good. I don't know if it was worth the trip. Sean Duffy is the transportation secretary showing up at the airplane crash. Cut 9, please. Cut 9.
When I was at the crash site, it was just a reminder that when you're traveling by air, you should wear your seatbelt. If you see the videos of the air crash, wear your seatbelt when you're on the airplane. Also, in a car, wear a seatbelt. As you see from last night, they do save lives.
Well, thank you. That makes a lot of sense to me. Do I want to do Robert Mueller again? I actually do. Robert Mueller. He's gone. I already went through how President Trump had every right to, quite frankly, diss him even in death. It's in keeping with some great philosophers. Seneca, Montaigne, Marcus Aurelius. Don't overperform grief. If it's sincere, fantastic. If it's not, don't. And death does not automatically bestow on somebody nobility or virtue. And I don't think Robert Mueller was a very virtuous man. And here's my proof. Cut 10, please. Robert Mueller answering Jerry Nadler's questions. If Jerry Nadler questioned me, I'd probably just get up and walk out. But Robert Mueller did the dance. Cut 10.
So the report did not conclude that he did not commit obstruction of justice. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And what about total exoneration? Did you actually totally exonerate the president?
No.
No, Robert Mueller. That's not the job of the Justice Department, for crying out loud. You don't go around declaring people innocent. The way that thing was handled, in that line, we found no evidence of a conspiracy, but we cannot exonerate the president. That was a sop to all the radicals in the office. He put that in there. And it was a dereliction of duty. It undermined America. He wasted our money, $37 million. He wasted President Trump's time. He weakened his administration. And it wasn't just that. Ever since this guy showed up, all the way back in 2001, he was a dirty rat bastard. Robert Mueller, the ex-FBI director. It doesn't matter what he did in Vietnam. It does not matter. And the days of, we have to respect their service. No, we don't actually anymore. We don't. That's been canceled. Sorry. You guys ruined it. You guys, it was all weaponized. Yes, we admire military service until it was weaponized and used against us. And now there's a practice. Anytime somebody has a political agenda, sometimes liberals, sometimes conservatives, you find some chump who might have law enforcement or military credentials, and then you get them to repeat whatever your political agenda is. And then the thinking goes, well, we've already neutralized half of the opposition because people will be afraid to take this person on because of the military service, which most people lack. So people will keep their mouths shut. And it's not going to be that way anymore. Quite frankly, I'm trying to think if it's ever been that way with me. When the Capitol Hill cops came out, I knew they were lying. I said it out loud. I called them fake cops, General Milley and the rest. A lot of people don't have that. They don't have that. They won't do that. But I'm urging people, even if you weren't in the military, you got to stand up and say, Anybody remember Dr. Robert Hatfill? The anthrax mailer, they said. But they were wrong. They were wrong. The FBI made yet another mistake. The Federal Bureau of Incompetence, maybe even to this day. I know they have some decent guys at the top, whatever, but I don't know. Here's Dr. Hatfill. They hounded him, and they bothered him, and they followed him all the way back in 2002. They swore up and down that he was the anthrax mailer, right up until the time they found the real anthrax mailer. About 8 years later. I forgot the guy's name. He was at the Centers for Disease Control. He was at that Army lab in Maryland. More on him in a second, but listen to poor Dr. Hatfill. Cut 11, please. Cut 11.
I want to look my fellow Americans directly in the eye and declare to them, I am not the anthrax killer. I know nothing about the anthrax attacks. I had absolutely nothing to do with this terrible crime. It has an investigation that is characterized by the apparent avoidance of any major avenue of inquiry except the one decided upon by the Attorney General. Most importantly, it is driven by a compelling and overwhelming desire that the FBI look good at any cost, regardless of the price in individual freedom, due process, common decency, and civil liberties.
How about that? Very prophetic. Very little has changed. That's all the way back in 2002. Mueller was the director. Hey, Mueller was the director on 9/11. I don't understand how all the people who are in positions of power, somehow they bear no responsibility for what happened on 9/11, even though the system was going crazy. The system was going crazy that something bad was going to happen on 9/11 involving airplanes. I heard they put out a circular. A circular. What is a circular? Penny saver? They put an ad in the penny saver that something could happen? That's the kind of thing that it's a red alert, for crying out loud. They didn't do a damn thing. There's more on Dr. Hatfill and what the FBI did to him illegally because they just wanted to arrest somebody. It was the wrong guy. Cut 12.
The FBI playbook calls for pressure, pushing a suspect for a confession. They decided to squeeze Stephen Hatfill. It started with what the FBI calls bumper lock, 24-hour surveillance, and they let him know they were doing it.
Management was convinced he was the right guy. And so as a result, there were, intense surveillance, bumper lock type surveillance of Dr. Hatfill that went on for months.
There is a brutal, sustained attempt by the FBI in these cases to turn or crack the suspect. And it doesn't look much like what happens on TV. It can be quite rough. And what they were doing to Hatfill clearly was an effort to create pressure in the hope that he would crack.
Well, he didn't. And then the guy who was actually responsible was out there still mailing the letters. Bruce Ivins. Does that name ring a bell? It's kind of been actually downplayed. Bruce Edwards Ivins was an American microbiologist, vaccinologist, and senior biodefense researcher at the United States Army Medical Research Institute of Infectious Diseases at Fort Detrick, Maryland, and the person identified finally by the FBI as the perpetrator of the 2001 anthrax attacks. Ivins died on July 29th, 2008, by an overdose, suicide, after learning that criminal charges were likely to be filed against him by the FBI for an alleged criminal connection to the attacks. And the guy was like in plain sight. They should have figured it out much, much earlier. All throughout his career, they were writing, this guy's a nut. This guy's insane. Dr. Hatfill? Poor dude. He ultimately sued and actually made pretty good money. So anyway, there's a lot of reasons to not wish, oh my goodness gracious, he's gone. He was a war hero. Who cares? Here we go. Here's ABC News. First of all, they were totally appalled, right? Pretty funny. Let me do this again. Cut 13, please. Cut 13.
And the roundtable responds to President Trump's stunning reaction to the death of Robert Mueller.
From ABC News, it's This Week. Here now, Jonathan Karl.
Before we get started this morning, a few words about Robert Mueller. Mueller, who died yesterday, is known by many as the man behind the Mueller report, which of course looked into Russian interference in the 2016 election.
And found out that President Trump didn't do anything wrong, but we'll just bury that little piece of information. All right, there are a few more things about that case that I got to say, and about that man, Robert Mueller, okay? And what happened to President Trump and how he's being treated, and how in this country we have basically a never-ending soft military coup underway against sitting presidents of the United States. A perpetual soft military coup. And I think I got the formula to stop it. We'll be right back.
Greg Kelly.
Let's go, Brandon.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network. Greg Kelly. On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
All right. Are we back? Yes, we're back. Hey, Mark Levin was dynamite with Joe Kent. A couple of things. And this is that soft coup I was talking about. They find a chump with some kind of credentials, and they harness that guy to represent whatever cause it is they're pushing. And they already have an advantage in the cause they're pushing because it will shut down a lot of opponents because they're intimidated by military service or law enforcement service. Folks, you got to get out of that. If you're in it, whatever. Most regular people aren't. But this guy, I know. I'm kind of drafting this thing here, and I point out that all the amateurs and the roided up podcast bros are still really buying con man Joe Kent's crap, especially about being deployed 11 times to war. 11 times to war, 11 times to war. He's been deployed 11 times to war. 11 times, he said. Just ask him. In fact, I may have some of those from the other thing, from the PM. Joe Kent bragging about his military service. I urge you to check that. It might be in the secondary block. But 11 times in combat, and he's a Green Beret. That may fool and impress some people. But I have been watching for 25 years and various fighting men and women lying their asses off about the progress being made in Iraq and Afghanistan. The military said we were winning in Afghanistan right up until the moment we lost. And the dishonesty is especially obvious in Mr. Kent. We're going to call him Mr. Kent. I can't believe how many times he says this. I have a whole montage. He says it everywhere he goes. I deployed 11 times. I know what it's like to hunt and kill humans. And very gullible and insecure civilians, and especially podcasters, 11 times, wow. And he killed people? Oh, boy. That's tough. We must listen to him. He must know. And we must honor his service above all. No, actually, we don't. We don't have to honor his service. All right? Because that's the trap. That's the trick. Like too many vets who have been corrupted by politics, he has weaponized his military stint. And that 11 number is the telltale sign. The number is artificially high because he's counting any time he ever got on a plane for a business trip or what is sometimes called a micro deployment. Now, I checked out his book, a silly self-promotional mess that looks like it was ghostwritten by some kid in middle school. And Joe is awfully vague about when he leaves and when he gets back. For instance, in one part, he talks about he deployed in the spring of 2016. And he was back in June of 2016. Now, when in the spring? The spring's a 3-month period of time. Why does he say spring? Why didn't they say, I don't know, March 20th? Maybe it wasn't in March. The spring also goes into May, April, May, June. Part of June is spring. Was it 6 weeks, 3 weeks, 2 weeks, 5 days? When you brag that your service is somehow superior because it involves 11 deployments, it is necessary that we take a closer look. Because what people do, they compare Joe's 11 deployments to the regular troops, right? Regular troops. Regular troops. What do? They go for one deployment. Just one deployment. One deployment or 11? Which one is more impressive? 11, right? But what if that one deployment lasts 15 months? 1 year and 3 months. 15 months. That was happening in the war. Is that a wussy, Joe? Because they only went once and you went 11 times? Biden pulls this nonsense all the time. I've been to Iraq 38 times, meaning he spent 10 hours on the ground total in the green zone. Pete Buttigieg did it too in his silly autobiography. He would say, I went outside the wire 132 times. I went outside the wire 132 times. What does that even mean? You went off base? You actually count that? Why did you count that? Because the only people who would count that are politicians trying to exploit and fool voters and podcasters. And during those 11 deployments, if you're going to boast and brag about the 11 deployments, I think it's important that we know what you did. And I know this about Joe Kent. When he deployed, he was quite the ladies' man in Baghdad. He would ogle women at the green zone pool. I can't believe this, but it's true. He would strut around in his panties. In his panties. That's his word, not mine. He uses that word in the book, his panties. And he would basically loaf and drink. You waste so much taxpayer money on these boondoggles that he actually says he feels guilty about it. The ridiculous self-serving book is called Send Me, The True Story of a Mother at War. And I got to tell you, I've about had it with these women in combat. I don't want to see that anymore. I don't think women should die. I think women should be home, nurturing, and caring. What an arrangement that he had with his wife. It's beyond me how they could do what they did. Very ambitious, I suppose. For what? Well, I think we're seeing some of it right now. Fame, podcasts, who knows what's next? Who knows what's next for that young man? I know he's desperate to be somebody. He ran for Congress twice and lost. He successfully, though, turned a Republican seat blue. He challenged the incumbent congressman, who was a Republican, beat her, and then lost to the Democrat nominee twice, 2022 and 2024. So this book, he writes it 2 years ago, 2024. Here are some of the quotes. A marble swimming pool with bearded operators grilling out nearby and nothing more than a pair of Ranger panties and a healthy dose of sunscreen. Days were spent sleeping and lounging by the pool. Everyone was on a first-name basis, and even the most serious matters could be discussed in board shorts by the pool. We were talking about that yesterday. I don't know what board shorts are. I know short pants. I know long pants. I don't know board shorts. I certainly don't know Ranger panties. Somebody tried to tell me, well, those are like those, I don't know what the hell they said. Ranger panties. Are you crazy? I mean, I know that well, never mind. More quotes. Joe liked the people who lived and worked in the green zone and he enjoyed more than a few drinks at the bar there over the years. But the culture was a bit too laid back for his taste in 2007. Well, you see, he felt bad about it. He felt bad about the over-the-top spending and misspending on luxury for America in Iraq, and it was over the top. I went to Burger King in Iraq. I bought my first iPod in Iraq. A friend of mine bought a flat-screen TV in Iraq. I know somebody else who bought a Harley-Davidson motorcycle. That was a big thing. You always got to support the troops, but then again, should you spoil them? I remember I was in Fallujah. I was in downtown Fallujah by that bridge where they hang those guys, and then we go back to the mega base camp, which is like 10 Walmarts put together. The pastry chef made me a custom-made little crepe thing. They had crepes. Crepes. Joe liked the people. Let's see. He felt that America had been at this too long and with too little success to enjoy drinks by the pool. Yeah, I would say. He also said the mystique wore off, and he was annoyed by his buddies who spent too many nights at the green zone chatting up the intel woman. Sounds like a lot of fun, maybe, except you're doing it on our time. Oh, and by the way, you're creating enemies as you go about it. We went in so heavy, so late, and so many guys like Joe here, hard up to get in on the fight, feeling guilty at the pool, right? Drinking. So when they got the chance to kick some ass, they kicked it a little bit harder than maybe the ass should have been kicked. They were going to have their war, and they were going to have their fun. We freaked up over there so bad. And part of it is just that. Little guys, gung-ho guys like this, overdoing it. Let's see here. Success, intel women. Some kid from Ohio probably just lost his legs on the other side of town while we're sitting here arguing over semantics, he thought. His disdain for bureaucracy burned, and he could only take so much of this. These people will solve nothing and be back by the pool relaxing before the day ends. See, this is what he was going back all the time for, 7 times. We should be blowing in the door on every Iranian diplomat in Baghdad, not going to the green zone to chat over espressos, he thought. Yeah, but did he say? Did he say it? Maybe he should have written a memo back then. Hey, we're losing the war in Iraq. He could have pulled a John Kerry. He's pulling a John Kerry. It's just like John Kerry. Man, what a bad news dude. Let's see here. What do you think? Am I being too harsh on the guy? I don't think I'm being harsh enough. And this is a soft coup. Vindman. The left used Vindman. The woke right is using Kent. Military guys, they think it's awkward for people to, and you got to hit them where you think they're the strongest, right? You got to take what people perceive as their strength and dismantle that because it's wreckable, all right? Because he's lying, he's exaggerating. He does it all throughout this gosh damn thing. And it's not just military. It could be ex-military. It could be FBI. Here we are, like Mueller. Here's another reason why you're supposed to worship Mueller. Well, the real reason is because he tripped up Trump. But they'll pretend in this moment that it's because he was in Vietnam and a military hero. Cut 14.
But what perhaps some don't know about Robert Mueller is that he was a genuine war hero. During a time when many of his peers were trying to avoid military service, he volunteered, joining the Marines after his college roommate was killed in Vietnam. Mueller served for more than a year in combat in Vietnam, receiving a Purple Heart after he was shot in the leg. And he was awarded multiple times for valor, including a Bronze Star and a Navy Commendation Medal.
Ooh, so what? What do I care? What does it have to do with me? Sooner or later, someone's going to write the book about medal inflation and medal chasers, right? Sometimes you got a Bronze Star just for being in a unit. Everybody in the unit gets a Bronze Star. It sounds more impressive than it is. And there are heroes over there who didn't get any medals. You know what I mean? You get medals for showing up, but not every act of bravery is witnessed. And then somebody has to write it up and put in the paperwork. The bureaucracy takes over. And sometimes the bureaucracy plays games. One more here, if you don't mind. Cut 15.
Donald Trump reacted to the news of his death by posting this just minutes after it was announced. Quote, "Robert Mueller just died. Good. I'm glad he's dead." That's a remarkable statement for anybody to make, especially a president of the United States.
Well, it's remarkable right there, right then and there. You left out the other part of his statement. Why was he glad he was dead? So he can't hurt any more innocent people. You know? Like Mr. Hatfield. Is Mr. Hatfield glad he's dead? It's okay. It's not the most sacrilegious thing I've ever heard. In fact, it's not sacrilegious. It's honest. And if we're honest with ourselves, if we're Christians, if we believe Judeo, he's with God right now. And you could argue that's a thing to celebrate. Maybe we got it all wrong about death. Anyhow, beware the soft coup. It is ongoing. The bureaucrat, and sometimes they use Democrats, sometimes they use Republicans. But it's all to delegitimize us, the people, who elect people like Trump. And President Trump is supposed to defer to the intelligence community, to 18 intelligence agencies that said Iran was not an imminent threat. Those are the same intelligence agencies, oh, by the way, that told us there were weapons of mass destruction. They're always wrong. Anyway, it's just one piece of the puzzle for President Trump to consider. It's not mandatory. The Constitution doesn't work that way. Joe Arthur Kent. Be right back.
Greg Kelly on the Red Apple Podcast Network. Greg Kelly, entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Man, they're trying to cancel Cesar Chavez. 50 years after the guy died? Cesar Chavez. I don't know that much about him. I remember unionized the fruit pickers, right? It's from Mexico. And I always heard, vaguely that he was on the right side of history. Cesar Chavez, right? And now they're figuring out, when did he die? He died actually 32 years ago in 1993. He was born in a town that I know well, Yuma, Arizona. Cesar Chavez. What did he do? Accused of abusing women and girls. Now, how the hell is he going to defend himself from that? He's dead. Died in 1993. And let me ask you something. Is it possible, just possible, that there could be a financial component to the allegations against Cesar Chavez? Look, maybe he's guilty as hell. I don't know. I do know it's kind of impossible to prove, possibly at this point. Certainly impossible to defend. How does his family feel about this? Power. You're going to strike 30 years later? What was going on 30 years ago? The women, by the way, that were groped, groomed, whatever, allegedly, they were adults by the time he, they grew up. Well, the shame that comes with it. What shame? If you were victimized by somebody, you shouldn't be ashamed. Anna Magera remembers the day the man she regarded as a hero called her house and summoned her to see him. She walked along a dirt trail, entered the rundown building, passed his secretary, and stepped into his office. Oh, boy. I don't like the way this is going. Well, this is the New York Times. I mean, they've gotten big, super-duper big things wrong before. An investigation by the New York Times found extensive evidence that United Farm Workers co-founder groomed and sexually abused girls who worked in the movement. I would have to think that is problematic. I don't think they have the full story. How is a jury of peers ever going to weigh in on this? It's become the easiest. It's easy. It's too easy. It's too easy to destroy a man when he's dead, certainly. I don't know. I'm skeptical. This is the same newspaper that told me Hillary Clinton was going to win. This is the same newspaper that said slam dunk, there are weapons of mass destruction. This is the same newspaper that tells me President Trump is an existential threat to American democracy. This is the same newspaper that said that January 6th was the worst attack on our capital since the War of 1812. And now they tell me some guy who I haven't thought of in decades And they spent about 50 million words on this piece. 67 reporters talking to all these people. Hey, we have determined it. I don't know. I doubt it. I want to give this guy the benefit of the doubt. 800-8489-222. 800-848-9222. When we come back, Mark Levin is on this station every night, and it's a privilege, an absolute privilege, that, quite frankly, in a way, we work together. And I've known Mark not well. Been on his show. He's been on mine. But what he did last night with that Joe Kent character to expose him as the crazy conspiracy theorist and quite frankly, anti-Semitic person. And that guy, he's definitely anti-Semitic. All right? The terminology, the tropes, if you will. This is what happens to your brain when you watch too many podcasts. First, you get a whole bunch of crazy ideas. And then, I think that happens first. And then you think, hey, maybe I can make millions and millions and millions of dollars as well. Now, you can't. There are like 5 people in the country who are making millions of dollars doing that. But Joe thinks he can be one of them, and maybe he will.
Thanks for listening to The Greg Kelly Show. You can hear The Greg Kelly Show weekdays at 12:15 on 77 WABC. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode, so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?